Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
Okay, Rob Browne here with you on this Thursday college football, basketball, baseball, blitz and roundtable. We got a lot going on in the college sports world, man. We're going to start off with Jason Caldwell, inside the Auburn Tigers, will join us here at 24/7 Sports in just a moment, followed by Gary Harris in Tuscaloosa at Tide 100.9, sports anchor for WVUA TV 23 in Tuscaloosa. Top of hour number 2, Matt Dean joins us on the AD angle. John Hartwell out this morning. He's in the process of moving to Monroe, where he's going to take over as the new athletic director for ULM, the Warhawks. And Franz Beard will rejoin us in the final segment on today's show. Hey, we're here 6 days a week, Monday through Saturday. Help keep the lights on. Let's keep it growing. We need your support. Hit that Patreon button, the orange P at the top of the www.sidelines.live website. I figure this way. We do 25 shows on average per month. If you're giving $10 a month, that's 40 cents a show for 2 hours of content with the best guests on any show out there. Follow us on Twitter at sidelines_live. Jason Caldwell, last night, got a chance, and know you were there, watch the Auburn Ole Miss game. It was a struggle. Kermit Davis, when he first came into the league, seemed to have Bruce Pearl's number. Last night, he almost did it again. You could see the frustration on his face, and his players, they can't shoot that well. But if Auburn can't rebound better than that, they're going to be struggling to beat anybody. Is this Auburn team one that plays down to the level of the competition? Because nobody blows them out. They're in every game. They, like Bruce Pearl said, they beat everybody they're supposed to beat, and everyone that they're not supposed to beat, if they've either beaten them, that Northwestern win is getting more valuable with every week. But they're in every game. What's missing on this team, and what's going to change, or you think can change for these last 3 games for going into the tournament for seeding purposes for the SEC tournament?
Yeah, nothing's going to change with this team. They are who they are. They're a team that can play pretty good defense, but they have trouble scoring, and that's just plain and simple. They've actually shot the ball okay, but one of their issues is they turn the ball over way too much. That they were up big last night, turned the ball over a few times, look up, and Ole Miss right back in the game because of a big run. But you're right, rebounding. Janai Browne is a guy that's a solid rebounder. There's not anybody else on this team that I go, hey, that guy knows how to rebound. They just don't do it. And it almost cost them against Ole Miss. And now you're going to face Goster Shebue and a Kentucky team that can absolutely rebound. Alabama's got size. Tennessee's got size. If you're right, I've said it's shot selection and rebounding. That's the 2 keys for this team. There for a couple of stretches last night, they had much better ball movement, much better shot selection, and it buoyed them to a lead. And then it went back to dribbling way too much and settling for bad shots, turned the ball over. But Ole Miss had a ton of offensive rebounds, and this team's not going to win unless they dominate the glass because of the way they play defense, because they had to get in transition, do those things. And so they are what they are at this point. Can they find a way to win another game or two to help themselves? I mean, yeah, they have the ability. I mean, look, Alabama went on the road last night, got 41 from Brandon Miller, and had to go to overtime to beat South Carolina.
Yeah.
Kentucky was in a dogfight with a Florida team, without Colin Castleton. Tennessee has been struggling.
Yeah.
You have a chance to win all 3 of these games, but you also have a chance to lose all 3 of them. And that's just what this team is.
Yeah, it is. And we talk about, and I was reading a lot of different comments on different text threads and just social media last night. Bruce Pearl didn't bring in the new guards that everybody hoped he would. He trusted his current guards, Zep Jasper, and I think about it. The KD Johnson and Wendell Green. those three guards, they're good, but they're not great. And in the coming years, he's bringing in some big time talent. That's just what happens. But they're still at the 19 win plateau. Again, this is what you expected out of this team, knowing all that.
Yeah, I picked them to be 10-8 in the league, and so they got one more to win to get there. That's who I thought they were, especially after seeing them late in the kind of late in the non-conference schedule and early in the SEC play. They're just too limited offensively, and that was going to be the issue for this team. And so, a healthy Chance Westry without knee surgery probably makes a big impact on this team.
Mm-hmm.
And then, last night Wendell Green made plays down the stretch, but a lot of them were at the free throw line. He does a good job of that.
Yes.
But you look at Auburn and Tennessee especially, and the one thing they don't have is a guy that you go, okay, when we have a need, the ball's in his hands and he's going to score. Wendell Green is the guy that has been charged with that for this Auburn team, because that he's the only guy that has right now that has the capability of making those kind of shots. But it's tough when you're 5'10" trying to do those things. Tennessee doesn't have one of those guys either, at least at the moment, and they've lost a bunch of close games too. Two very similar teams, and they played 48-46, whatever that game was in Knoxville a few weeks ago.
Yeah,
they're very similar type teams, and they both have the same issues, which is scoring and having a go-to guy that, okay, when the other teams scored 8 in a row, go to this guy, clear out and let him get a basket. And it's hard to find that guy for either one of those teams. And that's an issue for this Auburn team all year. Heck, to be where they are, they've done a pretty good job of just grinding, and it has been a grind for this team. Can they grind out one more? That's I think they may be okay anyway. You can't take every year the same. Every year is not the same in college basketball.
Yeah.
5 years ago, 9-9 in the SEC probably doesn't get Auburn in. The bubble is extremely soft. The ACC is not very good. They got to take 68 teams, and I think 9-9 is still going to be good enough for Auburn. But you want to win one more just to take yourself off a bubble for sure.
Yeah, I agree. And you also mentioned a few weeks ago on the show about Johan Traore. He comes in. He had signed with LSU. He's a 5-star. Comes to Auburn, and compare him to a 5-star last year, Jabari Smith. There is no comparison. They're all different. But are you concerned, or there's a lot going on behind the scenes that I sure don't know about, but his development, Johan Traore, he's a 5-star. You typically see those guys come in and play right away, especially look at Arkansas. Eric Musselman, each of his 3 years, he's leaned on typically one freshman heavily. This year, it's been 3, and now Nick Smith Jr. is out there 4. And they're looking like they're playing their best basketball right now. What's the ceiling on Johan Traore? Is he? I'm just, he's not Jabari Smith. He hasn't played basketball as long, but I'd like your thoughts on what his ceiling is.
Yeah, I think he's got a very high ceiling. It's just a matter of how much he continues to develop, and when he finally gets the opportunity to earn that playing time, because that's the thing about this team is this is a deep Auburn basketball team. Arkansas lost everybody, so they had to have those guys play. They had no choice, and they're talented. But they also went and got a bunch of those guys because they had the opportunity for playing time. Yeah. Auburn did not have much opportunity, and that was the issue. And so I think you look at Traore, and he's a guy that you would like to have had more minutes for on a team that, if you're on a team that, say last year that had some games where you won by 15 or 20, he would have been able to get more of those minutes. But it's hard to do that in situations where it's a dogfight every day, and you've got some depth at those spots. And that's been the issue for him. So he's talented. He's big, athletic, got a good shooting stroke. It's just the understanding of kind of the little things of basketball that has to come along for him, and just the development part. He's a guy that has NBA ability, but as we've seen before, that doesn't guarantee anything. We'll see how much he develops over the course of the next 6 months are going to be vital for him to see kind of what he does. And him and Chance Westry both are, heck, anybody on this team, anybody on any team, you don't know if they're back on your roster next year.
That's right.
And so that's the thing that you don't know from a coaching standpoint is, hey, what's our roster going to look like next year? It may be drastically different. And right now, nobody might not have a clue that's going to happen.
Yeah. Well, in the what if category, what if Jabari Smith and Walker Kessler are on this Auburn team? Where do you think they'd be right now? And I know I'm just having fun with this one.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, they won the league last year. It'd be virtually the same team. That's the thing. You would not have Janai Browne.
Yeah.
So that's one thing you wouldn't have.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't have Browne in that situation. You'd have Walker Kessler. You'd have Jabari. So it looked a lot similar to last year, where you're going to be good enough to beat pretty much everybody on every night, but you still have the issues that this team has, which is, okay, we're going to let that guy get his. Somebody else has got to get some. And that's hard to do right now for this team.
Yeah. And I get a lot. I'm getting texts right now. What about these guards that are coming in next year for Auburn that they've signed makes them better than any other group of guards that Bruce Pearl has signed? Because having big, tall guards, I mean, where are they? The 6'4", 6'5" guys that can shoot from 3-point range, that can hit the 2-point, mid-range jumper and all. But everybody's always looking ahead. Of course, you still got to finish this season. There's a lot of basketball to play.
Yeah, Aiden Holloway's got a little bit more size. I mean, he's 6 foot tall, so he's a little bit bigger than the guys you've had at the point position. And the guy he's a good shooter. He's a guy that's a perimeter shooter and a guy that can do those things. And so, he's a guy that's a little bit different. I mean, a couple of inches, but he's got a little bit more length. That's the thing. Jared Harper was probably as small or smaller than Wendell Green, but he had longer arms, so he was a longer player. Yeah. And so Aiden Holloway's a little bit longer. And then, the guys in 2024, obviously you look at LeBaron Filon's 6'3", 6'4". I mean, he's much bigger guard than Auburn's had for the last couple of years. And so point guard, they, for whatever reason, they gravitate towards the smaller point guard, quicker, athletic, and guys that can get up and down the court. And Aiden Holloway's a guy that can do that, but he's probably a little bit better shooter, classic shooter than what they've had probably since, Jared Harper.
Yeah. You also mentioned that if you've got guys like Janai Browne, Dylan Caldwell that can play with their back to the basket, will go for the rebounds and do a lot of the blue collar work. It's an advantage because it's not. You mentioned also go back 15, 20 years ago. You have 35 or 40 guys like that on different teams around the country in college basketball. Now you've got Auburn's got a couple. Oscar Tshiebwe at Kentucky, but it's literally a handful. And Janai Browne, Dylan Caldwell. How much better? I mean, is Browne going to be the newcomer of the year in the SEC?
Not as long as Brandon Miller keeps playing basketball. He's not. I mean, that guy's a freshman. So
well, I'm talking about. Well, I know he's the freshman of the year, player.
Well, I mean, I think it's the same thing. I mean, I think, I mean, there's no discussion in that role. I don't think Janai Browne's been really good. I don't know that there's a difference in those roles, but there's some other really good newcomers in this league, and so it's it's difficult. But as far as a transfer newcomer, he'd be about as important as anybody when you look at what he's done. And so, let's see. When you look at his stats at the moment, I'm trying to pull them up.
And I was just thinking along the lines of what Bruce Pearl said in his post-game comments last night on SEC Network. Brandon Miller aside, that he's a freshman and he's probably going to be your player of the year in the league if he finishes the season. But Janai Browne has been really important. I mean, that's one of the best transfers Auburn's ever brought in.
Yeah, he's been really good. And you mentioned Dylan Caldwell. To me, he's not a back to the basket guy. He's an alley-oop guy. Or a rebound guy. But 3.9 points, 4 rebounds a game. If you'd have told me before the season that was Dylan Caldwell's average, I'd have said no chance. He's a guy that to me has much more potential than that, and he just hasn't he hasn't taken that next step in his game. Now, extremely athletic, does a lot of good things. He's a big energy guy. The skill set. Janai Broome is a guy that he is exactly that guy. He is a guy that has something that not many other guys have.
Yeah.
The jump hook in the lane, understands body control and leverage, does those things. And, he understands positioning. He's averaging 8.9 rebounds a game, 14.1 points. And so when you look at him, he's done a really good job. He's shooting 52% from the floor. And so he's done a good job of doing those things. But I think, if you had that kind of double guy that you could, bring in and go, hey, he's going to give you more offense and do those things, just hasn't materialized for whatever reason. Jalen Williams has been the most consistent guy. You really had three guys. This team's been a three-man scoring front. You had a little bit of Allen Flanagan, a little bit of KD Johnson, but Jalen Williams, Broome, and Wendell Green have been the guys that kind of had to carry the load. Yeah,
especially Wendell at the foul line. Well, Auburn's got a murderer's row coming up at Kentucky, at Alabama, come home Saturday, March 4th against Tennessee. Yeah, you're right. They could win them all. They could lose them all. That's just the way this team is, sitting there at with 9 wins in the league right now. God, and that's going to be as tough. That schedule is definitely loaded on the back end. That's just how it goes this year. But you're right. Florida without Castleton put up a good fight. South Carolina last night against Alabama, and they're terrible. But look at Ole Miss, took Auburn to the wire, and they've won 2 conference games, and then LSU gets a win. We'll be right back with more Jason Caldwell.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
Yeah, LSU last night gets the first win in a while since the Arkansas victory Wednesday, December 28th, the night of Arkansas, Kansas in the Liberty Bowl. So it just goes to show you that as the season goes on, some of these teams that have been really bad are getting better. LSU may flip their roster completely. 11 new guys again. Who knows? I mean, look at Arkansas. They brought in 11 new guys. Looking at it right now, what kind of a turnover? Do you have any kind of a number? What do you think Auburn will look like next year? And you're right. You don't know.
I have no clue.
Just an educated swag, scientific wild ass guess.
I have no clue. Honestly, I just don't know. Because you don't know what this thing's going to look like, and basketball is probably more difficult than any sport right now. I mean, you start looking. We know Zep Jasper's gone. He's a guy that has no eligibility. Everybody else on this team has eligibility remaining because of that COVID year.
Yeah,
and so I don't expect everybody to be back on this team, but I don't know what it's going to look like and how many transfers. I would expect Auburn to go out and get at least one transfer from a shooting guard perspective and potentially another bigger body guy. But other than that, I honestly don't know. And I don't know that they have an idea of what it's going to look like either until the dust settles on, a couple of weeks after this season, seeing kind of what this transfer market is going to look like.
Yeah. And with the new rule, you can transfer the first time immediately with really no problem, but the second time you're going to have to sit out a year. So that should change things if that works. Switching to football, Auburn is almost ready to start spring practice. But next week at this time they'll start.
Yeah, they'll be started on Monday, and so it's. I mean, we're just a couple of days away now from the start of spring practice.
Yeah,
and it's going to be a really interesting spring just to see, and people wanting to hear about a quarterback race and all this. I don't know that they're going to even get to that point in the spring, because they're only going to have about probably a third of the offense in at most. This is going to be a basic learning, trying to do some experimentation on both sides of the ball and see what they have to get ready for summer and to figure out, okay, what direction we want to go. Now, they may know who the quarterback is, 8 days into the spring, after they have some kind of scrimmage. I don't think that's going to be the case, but I think, you're going to rotate guys through, see what everybody looks like, see what kind of combinations work well. But it's going to be more learning, trying to get as much down as possible. And Hugh Freeze told us that, look, even if we only get a few things in, we got to get something in that we know how to do and can execute first. And so that's going to be the goal for a really quick turnaround in the spring, for these guys coming into their first year.
We always talk about it, and we're going to keep talking about it. Offensive line, you brought in some impressive transfers in the portal. I can't remember Auburn signing an offensive line class like this in a long time. Auburn's numbers are the lowest among their big rivals, Alabama, Georgia, and LSU. But you're bringing in, 7 new guys?
You got 8.
Eight. Okay. 8.
Yeah, 7 number, and 7 already on campus.
Yeah. So now what you just said there is the most significant aspect of that story. And you've got some big, tall guys that are athletic. The guys that were left behind that were recruited by the previous coaching staffs, Gus Malzahn and Brian Harsin, what is it about them? Was it a lack of development? They just weren't talented to begin with. But the guys that are still there, they're still working. And Jake Thornton's a new offensive line coach. I'm curious what he says about the talent that's there versus just what's coming in.
Yeah, he doesn't know because they haven't played. Yeah. That's been the thing. Like, it's been opportunity because Auburn was so experienced and so old on the offensive line for the last 3 years. Yeah. That those guys have, a guy like Colby Smith was a 4-star prospect, was committed to Tennessee originally, signed with Auburn. He hadn't played one snap on offense. One. And he'd been there 2 years. Garner Langlow was a guy that was a highly rated guy to the state of Florida. Hasn't played a snap in a couple of years. They're going to have more opportunity. And here's not even that. They weren't even in the second group because you had Killian Zaire, you had Austin Troxell, you had Brendan Coffey. You also had Alec Jackson. Yeah. Those guys were not in the first 2 groups at offensive tackle. So they weren't even getting second team reps, which is that's how you develop as an offensive lineman. They haven't had those opportunities. So this is going to be the first spring for them to really get in the mix and see what they can do. And obviously bring in Dylan Wade and, Gunnar Britton at offensive tackle. But that's really the offensive tackle group. When you think about Garner Langlow, Colby Smith, that's pretty much it. That's why they'll probably go get another guy at that position after the spring. But it's opportunity. They just haven't had much of that. All the guys inside have had opportunities. When you think about, Tate Johnson and Jaleel Irvin, and now, Jeremiah Wright, Cam Stutz. Yeah. Those guys have all played. But there just wasn't many of them. And the offensive line was so old, they didn't have an opportunity to really get into that mix.
You see all these high school players, you go to the camps, you get to see a lot. You've been doing it 24 years. Were you concerned? You could see it 4 or 5 years ago, just the steady decline in offensive line talent and then lack of development. Why didn't the coaches catch on?
Good question. Don't know. I've been talking about it for years and have no idea. And obviously, they recruited top guys.
Yeah.
but you also, sooner or later, you have to sign offensive linemen and go, look, we're going to sign this 6'6", 255-pound tight end, see if we can make him an offensive tackle. That's what Northern Illinois does, and that's what those guys wind up in the NFL. Look at NFL offensive tackles. Yeah, there's some guys from Alabama there. There's a whole bunch of guys that played small school football that were developmental guys. And you got to, sooner or later, you got to go find some guys and go, look, let's see if we can turn this guy into what we think he can be. And, you hear all the time coaches talk about our evaluations. Well, okay. Well, trust them then. If your evaluation is so good, trust your evaluation, offer that guy, bring him in and develop him. They didn't do that. And when that happens, you look up, and that's how you wind up with, a handful of offensive linemen on campus that you've recruited, and having to go to the portal and having to go to junior college and do those things. You should use those tools, but they should be a plug and not the basis for an offensive line.
Yeah.
And that's what it became over the course of the last 5 years.
Yeah. And then let's go over to defense, the linebackers, who all's back, but we know some of them, but the lack of depth at linebacker, that's a concern for everybody. But if your defensive line, the front four aren't good, it's going to be even tougher for the linebackers, because, if you're not tying up the offensive linemen and, they're able to plug those gaps, man, you can, and if you have no depth at linebacker, and you're not talented, your secondary is going to be your leading group of tacklers, which means you're winning 3 or 4 games on the season.
Yeah, no, your front seven's got to be good. And again, for 2 years, there was very little development in those positions. None in 2021. Last year, there was some development at the end of the year. They played and rotated a few more guys on that defensive front, but they had to go out and get bodies, because after the 2021 season, you lost almost an entire signing class. All those guys left because they didn't play in 2021. Yeah. And so you have a big hole there. They had to go fill that hole on the defensive line too. I actually think linebacker is in much better shape than it was this time last year with the additions of Austin Keys and DeMario Tolan. You lost Owen Papo, but that's it. But you bring back Cam Riley, you bring back Wesley Steiner, you bring back Desmond Tisdale. You got Eugene Asante that came in last year from North Carolina that played a few games last year and then got hurt and ended up sitting out redshirting. You also have Robert Woodyard, 4-star kid from Mobile that was an Alabama commitment, and Powell Gordon from Auburn High School. You got some depth there, and it's really almost a 2-position system like it was. Now it's gonna look like a 3-3, but that outside position is going to be more of a almost like it was before. And instead of the edge, it's going to be a jack, and it's going to do some. But so you're looking for 2 guys essentially to rotate in those roles, and adding a guy like Austin Keys is a big deal to go along. Cam Riley, those 2 guys is who I would expect to be the guys to watch for. When Auburn takes the field sometime, as long as they stay healthy.
Yeah. Well, Jason, it starts Monday. Tell people how they can follow you. I know you got to get going. Keep up with you because you're putting out content on Auburn Undercover 24/7 every single day. I love it.
Yeah, you can check us out at auburnundercover.com, autigers.com, and also get you there as well. And can also follow me on Twitter at ITATJason.
Again, what's A-Day, Saturday, April
8th? I think that's the day, if I remember correctly. So.
Okay. Yeah, more of just a chance to see Hugh Freeze. Hey, he's actually the coach, but you said maybe a third of the offense will be in. But hey, at least it's a start, something new. I think it's going to be better, as you say. They go from, you think maybe 3 or 4 wins, it was so bad, to this year you could have twice as many or more, depending on how that quarterback situation goes. Okay, hey, thanks so much. Let's do it again next week.
Yep.
All right. That is Jason Caldwell, always tip of the spear covering Auburn. Coming up April 8th, A-Day. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch the development in the spring of Auburn's offense. Obviously, defense, they got to work on that. But with Montgomery, Freeze. This is going to be great. Ron Roberts, defensive coordinator for Auburn. I expect Auburn defense to be a lot better. They're always going to have players, talent, but the concern at linebacker and really defensive line, you got some talented players. But I want to get into it next time I talk with Jason. Auburn had several players that put their names into the portal last year that decided to stay. Zakevious Walker out of Ellaville, Georgia. This guy he was the number 3 strong side defensive end in the country out of high school, number 11 ranked player in Georgia, 79th overall in the country. And if they can reach and connect with this guy, he is 6'4", again, 260, probably a little bit bigger than that now, but an incredible football player, athletically gifted. Those kind of guys, Desmond Tisdale, Wesley Steiner, Cam Riley's big, tall, rangy, 6'4", 6'5" linebacker out of Evergreen, Alabama. Those players must develop and be developed for Auburn to have a chance to be successful. You look around the league, look at Georgia, look at Alabama, and Brian Kelly, he's doing it. But Brian Kelly has more work to do than Georgia and Alabama per se, but they don't lack talent. And speaking of the future of the SEC, both Texas and Oklahoma had top 8 recruiting classes last year. I mean, top 8. So, I mean, this is the ones that finished up a couple of weeks ago. So they're going to be really strong. In the SEC, you can be, I'd say in the SEC, you can be 6th in the nation and 5th in the SEC. That's just how competitive this league is. And in the Big Ten, it's Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State in recruiting. Those schools do really well. Now, Southern Cal and UCLA, as strange as it sounds, they're going to get players. Southern Cal is going to get players, but when reality hits, Southern Cal has to start playing games across the country, that Big Ten schedule, except for their road games. This is going to be a fun one to watch. All right, let's switch gears, head to Tuscaloosa. Gary Harris. Gary, lot of stuff happening in the college sports world right now. Last night, Alabama goes on the road with all the distractions. Brandon Miller, 41 points. They win in overtime against a dreadfully bad South Carolina team. But, damn, man, that's life in the SEC. Auburn struggled to beat a 2-win Ole Miss team. Vanderbilt goes on the road to Baton Rouge and gets beaten by an LSU team that hadn't won a conference game since the opener, December 28th, in Baton Rouge against Arkansas. So no easy way out there. Texas A&M is still sitting there with 1 game behind, but 3 games left. Alabama right now is dialed in, trying to get that number 1 seed. Can they hold serve?
Yeah, I think they can, Rob. I still think Alabama's the best team in this league. And I don't have any hesitation in saying that at all. I mean, I think they're clearly the best team. Having said that, you do have to give Texas A&M a lot of credit. I mean, when you look at the way they started the season with their non-conference, which wasn't a very strong schedule to begin with, and for them to lose 5 of those games, against arguably competition that was either less or not better than their team. But Buzz's ability to get in the conference, make adjustments once he starts playing teams that he has a good scouting report on, and he knows well. They're such a gritty team, so it's not a given at all. But yeah, I mean, if you're asking me with Alabama with 3 games to go, a game up, would I take them to win the conference? I would, or at worst, tie if A&M doesn't lose another one and Alabama doesn't lose another one, and you're playing in that final game out in College Station for the conference championship. Clearly A&M, could be tough to handle there. So, but yeah, I like Alabama at worst to finish as co-champions. Of course, if they both finish with the same record, 16-2, and A&M has the head-to-head win, A&M would be the number 1 seed in the conference tournament, but they would be co-champions. But getting back to last night, We know what's transpired the last couple of days, and we saw an elite athlete. Rob, you and I've seen this, and a lot of the viewers and listeners have too. The truly elite athletes, they have an ability to block everything out, regardless of what's going on around them, and thrive in the moment. I mean, the rest of the team, like, they were more impacted by the events of the last 2 days than Brandon was. I mean, he outscored the rest of the team combined, as you said, with 41 points, which is his career high, breaking the 36 that he had against Gonzaga. And he had a similar game when Alabama played, in Nashville against Vanderbilt, right after it first happened, the shooting first happened. And he went up there.
Gary, hold those thoughts. We're going to take a quick break. I want to get back into that and then just get your thoughts, because you are the man on the street there, in Tuscaloosa. We'll get your perspective right after this.
Hey y'all, it's Ainsley from Hewlett & Dunn, just coming to let you know about our new collection of boots. It's going to be our dress boots. They're the Horsepower collection, and they're genuine exotic leathers and really comfortable. Comes in all different sizes and patterns, so come check them out.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
Gary, we took before the break, about the situation with Brandon Miller at Alabama. Again, I was a TV reporter when I came out of college back in Columbus, and man, I was talking to Phil Thompson, a friend of mine for 41 years, and he's an attorney in Auburn, does a lot of criminal defense work with Haygood, Cleveland, Pierce, Thompson, and Short there in Auburn. And he said, as a defense attorney, people will ask me, how can you defend these criminals? How can you do this? And his reply has always been, and my grandfather taught law. He was a judge. I have a nephew that's an attorney. I know a lot of attorneys, judges, people. He said, son, when it comes to the law, he goes, it'd be a mighty thin dime if there weren't two sides to every story. So you're the journalist, you're the sports anchor right there, and you see and hear and know things, what you can say on the air, what is OPSEC. I totally respect that, but what's your take on what happened and where we've gone since then, and just what is the policy for regular students and the student code of ethics? Because you look at other high-profile athletes. We all know about Cam Newton at Auburn. We know about different. You name the school. What's your opinion of what's going on?
Well, going back to the January 15th, the early morning hours there, of the shooting, and that next morning, we actually had a news reporter on the scene that morning around 2 a.m. And I had heard, noise that Brandon and Bradley both were, in the vicinity of the shooting, but I'd also been told that they weren't going to be charged, and they weren't suspects. So when this came out about the last couple of days, I wasn't totally caught off guard by it. I did not know that there was any, discussion of, Miller having taken Darius Miles, the gun. And then after reading all the information that came out yesterday, I don't really like, a lot of sportscasters just dive right into this legal pond, and I, and I don't, Rob. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
not a lawyer. Never
Yeah.
had any interest in being a lawyer.
I'm not either.
Don't really understand the law the way that some people do. And all I know is this, from what I have been able to find out, he's not a suspect, has never been a suspect, has not been charged, is not going to be charged. And then reading his attorney's, Jim Stanridge's press release yesterday, I mean, it's a situation. It's disappointing. It's tragic. On another side, as you said, there are two sides to every story. But as far as Brandon Miller is concerned, I can't see where he has done anything wrong, other than, the gun was in his car. He took it back. Darius Miles got it out. He didn't have any idea that anything was about to transpire the way that it did. And, that's the situation, the way that I know it. And as far as the student code of conduct, I don't know exactly. I know there is one. I don't know how it works, how you apply it, where it stands in this situation. So I'm not trying to dodge your question at all, Rob. I don't know anything more than that. And I do know this in the world that we live in now, in the social media world, regardless of whether it's an athlete or any high profile person, there are a lot of people who want to see successful people have issues, and unfortunately, and as I said, I don't want to lose fact. No one does. That there was a shooting here, a young lady was murdered, and that's tragic. But even in that situation, and that's why if the grand jury chooses to indict Miles and Davis, there'll be a trial, Rob, and there'll be evidence presented on both sides as to what occurred that night. But my thought process is that Brandon Miller's not involved in it. And, for me, it's just that cut and dry. And unfortunately, too, another side of social media is that, and I know we'd be naive to say otherwise, that I don't know that all of these people that are going out there on social media stating a case against Brandon Miller are really even know the situation or really even that concerned with what happened. It's just an opportunity as an opposing fan or someone who doesn't like Alabama basketball to be able to pile on. And I'm not saying in all cases that is happening, but I do think it happens. And, I think we'd be naive to say that it doesn't, but I don't, whether it was the school that I cover, Alabama, or whether it was another school in the conference around the country, I would be taking the same stance, and I'd not be going out on social media and posting a bunch of opinions on it, because that's just not the way I do it. So, all I can do is trust the law enforcement agency that they're going to handle it correctly, and that the administrators at the University of Alabama have done their due diligence. And I do think this, I think that Alabama would not be playing Brandon Miller if they felt there was any reason not to. And I'll stand by that, having covered Greg Byrne, covering Nate Oates. I don't think they're playing the guy just because he's a good basketball player. I think they have been assured by those that help make these decisions, and also in a law enforcement sense, that he hasn't done anything wrong. So, that's the fact. The facts as I know them at this point, and my indication is and expectation is that he'll continue to play.
Yeah, and I remember as a television reporter in Columbus, just working with the police, and sometimes I'd say, "Hey, look, we're, I know y'all know some stuff, help us. We've got another suspect out there, but we don't want that particular individual to know we're on to them." And so there's a lot of working parts. And, I think someone brought it up yesterday, one of our guests, that, that the way our legal system is, you can have a civil suit. So Brandon Miller gets drafted, massive contract. You could see the family of the lady that was killed come file a civil suit. So who knows what will happen, but I do know this, and I know the position that you're in. You've got to be so careful, because we do have we have a process, and the people I know, prosecutors, district attorneys that I've known over the years, the best quote that I ever got, best answer ever from a district attorney in Shelby County in Memphis said, "My job is not to see how many lives I can destroy by giving them 50 years or seeking the death penalty in a case. It is to ensure that two things happen. The prosecution and the defense are on their A game. If we do that, our system works. Otherwise, if there's judicial, prejudice or anything, undue influence or whatever, it doesn't work. So, all this should come out again. We don't.
Yeah, well, I mean, you keep saying all this should come out. Again, my opinion is that Brandon Miller had no idea what was going to happen when he drove back over there.
Yeah.
I mean, I keep seeing this about, and I've been told, I mean, these are things that the legal people here in Tuscaloosa have said. He's not a suspect. He's a witness. So this thought process that he's somehow going to be charged somewhere along the line, I don't know where that's coming from. I don't.
Yeah. What I think it is just people are speculating. That's it. I mean, I'm not saying it, but
as far as I know, Brandon Miller is not. There's not a legal issue with him at all, and not going to be. And as far as I understand, from what I've been able to put together, and it doesn't matter what I think. Number one, I mean, I'm just a sportscaster. What's going to happen is going to happen, and that's another thing. I think we all feel like now, because we have a Twitter account, we can influence people in regards to what happens. That's not the way I view it. I'm not an influencer. I'm not a social media influencer. I've got my opinion, but my thought process is that he's, and I don't think, based on this is my opinion on the facts that as I have seen them, that he had any idea what was going to happen when he went back over there. So this thought process that's out there that he somehow aided and abetted or is an accessory, I don't agree with that. That's my opinion, and I don't see that. And I think that's there was a lot of stuff that came out earlier this week. I even saw a lot of reporters saying, well, this came to light in the trial. There has been no trial. That was a preliminary hearing for the two defendants, and the grand jury will decide whether or not to indict. So there has been no trial. And all of these things that people have just run with, a lot of it is misinformation, Rob. So, I mean, people are going to say what they're going to say. They're going to think what they're going to think. Nobody can control that. And I don't see myself as someone that has, like I said, I don't have a great grasp of the law. I did have a lawyer on my show a couple of days ago, and the way it's been explained to me is that there is never a situation where he has been in any legal jeopardy. Now, as to whether or not he should be playing, that's the University of Alabama's decision, the athletics department's decision, the basketball coach's decision, and they've decided to play him. So that really is all I know about it.
Yeah. And I think what you have to look at is say, if that were your school, you got to put your, dislikes of a school or whatever aside and see what happens. But again, up to this point, if he's not being named as a suspect, and
he's not a suspect because again, I don't think he's done anything to be a suspect here. I mean, I'm not trying to argue with you, but he's not, as far as I understand, he is not a suspect, has never been a suspect, and there's nothing going to happen to Brandon Miller in a legal sense. Yeah,
I mean, that's what I was saying, is that if he's not named as a suspect, he's not a suspect. So that could change, but I'm agreeing with you. Right now, you can only go by, what and all these people. That's why I'm going to get an attorney on the show. I talked to one yesterday to explain to people, because, everybody, you're right. It's about influencing, and everybody wants to try to influence, but we've seen cases like this before when people have been accused of everything and they were cleared, but there were never any apologies to those people after they'd been through the ringer. So that, I can't imagine going through something like that. That would not.
Well, you've got, the bottom line is, and this is where I try to keep my focus.
Yeah.
And it's, if there is a trial, it's going to come out, but you do have a 23-year-old mom that's passed away.
Yeah.
Her family is forever influenced by this. You've got two young men that are defendants in this case. And their families are forever affected by this. And the fact that Brandon Miller is being made a focus by this by a lot of people, to me, is just missing the point. If there had been reason, for him to be arrested that night, he would have been arrested, and he wasn't then, and he isn't going to be now. And people don't have to, agree with that, but the facts are the facts, and that's that's kind of what I try to, in this world of conjecture and opinions, I do try, for the most part, to stick with the facts, and again, if he'd been arrested, if he'd done something wrong, he wouldn't be playing, he wouldn't be in school, he'd be sitting in a jail cell. So this 6 weeks after the shooting occurred, a lot of a lot of people trying to say, and again, I'm not pointing this at you, but this is why you're asking me about it, because it's out there as to is he culpable in a legal sense? And from what I understand, he is not. And for people to again say he aided and abetted and is an accessory and all of this stuff, I don't agree with that. I mean, I think that his friend should I don't have a gun. I don't carry a gun. I don't have a concealed weapon, an unconcealed weapon, a permit. I don't have a gun. I don't hunt. That I don't even have I don't have a rifle. I don't have a pistol. But what people that have it legally, that's their right. And I don't go around telling them they shouldn't have one. But should Darius Miles have a gun? I don't know. Did he leave it in the car? From what I understand, he did. Did he ask Brandon Miller to bring it back to him or come back to the scene? I guess he did. He got the gun out, and whatever occurred after that occurred. But from what I understand, that is all that Brandon Miller did. Was he came back, the gun was left in his car, according to his attorney. And again, that's his attorney. He never even put his hands on the gun. So I think there's a lot of people trying to tie him into this, despite the fact that law enforcement and the officials here in Tuscaloosa did not do it. Others are trying to do it, and they have, they're going to continue to do that. He's got to deal with the noise. But from what we saw last night, again, he's an elite athlete. He's one of the best freshman basketball players that I have ever seen. He's, to go for 41 points last night with all that is dealing with this team, while the other team looked like they were the rest of the team looked like they were sleepwalking, and he single-handedly kind of willed that team to victory. That tells you, he's an elite athlete that is able to focus. I'm sure this is not any fun for him. I'm sure it's not, any fun for the team, but it is what it is, and they're dealing with it. And, if you don't like the fact that Nate Oates is playing him, then that's your right. And if you think it's wrong, then that's your right. But from what I understand, that's all I can tell you, Rob. From what I understand, the university did its due diligence. Law enforcement has done its due diligence. And in a legal sense, there is no reason for Brandon Miller to not be playing. And as far as the code of conduct with the University of Alabama as a student, I know that they have one. How it's interpreted or what it means or those type of things, I don't know.
Yeah. All right. So, I mean, again, you're right. The big story here is that you had a 23-year-old woman who's dead who left behind a 5-year-old child. That should be the focus, and that's what people aren't talking about. And that's the tragedy, and of course that's all too common. It's sad, but that's why I wanted to ask you and just get your answers, because people are real quick to condemn, but they never apologize for what they do. And now the national media will descend upon Tuscaloosa like vultures, and that's just and they're just going to throw stuff against the wall.
Well, they've got a job to do, and it's and it is. Listen, whether I like it or anybody likes it, that's the noise that this team is going to deal with. You're right, and I think that they understand that it's up to them to, as a basketball team, to close ranks. And the media does have a job to do, and they're going to, like you said, follow this team with extra scrutiny. There's going to be extra scrutiny on Brandon Miller, and that's just the fact. That's the way it is. That's life. And
I'm gonna and I'm with you. I'm going to trust the legal people that I know, their opinion, because they do that for a living. So you're right, and it's going to be just watch and see what happens. But let the legal process, and you have to have some faith in people that do that I do a lot that do it for a living. Gary, I know you got to get in there for your show. Getting ready for spring practice. Alabama last year, those 5 games that went down to the last play, the last drive. What's going to be the focus? Give us the quick, I wish you could stay longer. The quick focus. What's going to be the number 1 or 2 goals of Alabama in the spring, other than who's the quarterback going to be?
Yeah, well, Rob, it's with Tommy Rees coming in here as the new offensive coordinator, it's kind of difficult to answer that, because we've had no media access to him at all, and won't have. But I think from just an overall standpoint, I think offensively, I think they want, you had Bryce Young, who's a special player, another one of these special, athletes. But so you gave him a lot of responsibility. You gave him, Bill O'Brien gave him a lot of, right at the line of scrimmage, a lot of RPOs, a lot of times when Bama fans were complaining about not running the ball. Well, he could have called it. It could have been a run. That was Bryce. And I think they're going to take some of that out of the quarterback's hands. I think that regardless of who the quarterback is, he will not be that experienced. He will not be proven. And I think they're, going to get back to more of standard play calling. I think they're going to have more motion, trying to get guys isolated in certain spots. And I do think there's going to be an attempt to be a little more powerful in the running game, to get back to more of a downhill running style.
Okay, Gary, hey, look, I know you got to go, but let's do this again next week. Okay. Great stuff. Appreciate your responsible comments, as always. That's why we love having you on this show.
Thanks, Rob.
You bet, man. Bye. All right, Rob Browne here, back for hour number 2. Great segment. That was Gary Harris, WVUA TV 23 and Tide 100.9 Sports Radio. There, put the app on your phone in Tuscaloosa. Look, whatever you think about the Brandon Miller and, Darius Miles and Mike Davis, they're all this, whatever the story is, it's all going to, be come out in a trial or whatever, if there's anything there. But at this point, you can only go by the facts and what you know. But I do have a lot of faith in Gary. He's a sports anchor in Tuscaloosa. He's, aware of what's going on there in town. And I'm going to trust him. And, I can imagine that he's being told any and everything by a lot of people, but you've got to make sense of this. But at the end of the day, the tragedy is a 23-year-old woman is dead and her 5-year-old son doesn't have a mom. So I hope there's something being done for that guy. And it's just, not a good situation, but let's get going. Matt Dean, AD Angle over in Memphis at Rhodes College. And we've got, but I want to say something before we get to talking. rumbleboxinggym.com/Midtown Memphis and Camp Lee opening up 3 of these gyms in Memphis. The first one expected to open late March, the first week of April. They're going, here's the layout. I love this because I love to exercise, work out, swim, bike, run, lift weights, do all that. Boxing, engage both sides of your brain. A lot of people nowadays need to engage all 4 sides of their brain. Some of the comments I hear. But the gyms will have 25 weight benches on one side of the studio, and it's a big studio with weights, free weights, barbells, bench in the middle. You will have a 45-minute boxing workout, intense workouts with other like-minded people who are there to get a high-energy, intense workout. On the other side, 25 punching bags. I mean, you talk about, again, work both sides of your brain, your legs, your hands, eye coordination. rumbleboxinggym.com/Midtown Memphis. You can join now at a discounted rate. This will be the first of 3 gyms. This location will be at Union and McLean in Midtown Memphis. I highly recommend you go to that website. You can go by there and see the site where the gym will open. rumbleboxinggym.com, proud sponsor of Sidelines. Matt Dean, look, a lot going on. We just talked with Gary Harris about the situation at Alabama. And, he doesn't know. But there's a student code of conduct at every school. based on what you know, and I'm just going to ask you this because Gary's a sports anchor and is a credited journalist for a long time in Tuscaloosa. He had an attorney on his show that said, "Here's what we know. This is what the law is." What would be, had you're associate AD now, you've been athletic director at Rhodes College. What would happen if the facts were the same at Rhodes College to everybody involved? Would they still be enrolled at Rhodes College, or would they be gone?
It's well, first of all, the first conversation, Rob, is with my direct report and the president, right?
Yeah.
And we're going to look at the facts. We're going to, probably look at the student handbook and the college university handbook on disciplinary measures. And the reality is of this situation, we don't know all the facts yet. So it was a tragedy. And when I woke up to this, last month, I was shocked. And then when I heard some of the things come out yesterday, it made me think, Rob, that the university has went through all of their policies and procedures and found that the young man at this time is not a suspect in a crime.
Yeah.
Now, was the comments by Nate Oates pretty insensitive yesterday? I thought they were. But I think he may have been caught off guard with some other information that got released, whether or not it was factual or not. But I thought the statement from the attorney of Brandon Miller was pretty clear. I don't know how you felt about that. So at that point in time, that was probably information the university had before they made any decision. You can't rush to judgment on the accessory situation until you have more information. That's all I would say. But if I would have got asked at the presser, I would have said, at this point in time, I can't comment on the facts of a criminal case. You're going to have to talk to the university attorney. That's all I would have said.
Yes.
Over. Done. And for him to make a comment, wrong place, wrong time. Come on, man. We had a young woman killed here. Of course it was the wrong situation. And I just think it was handled poorly from a response standpoint by the head coach. And I'm really shocked that he said anything.
I am too. Typically, I mean, I would have thought they would just say you're going to have to ask our attorneys or compliance or media relations department because I'm just the coach and this is a legal matter. It's out of my hands, and leave it at that. That I think that's what's made it. It's compounded it. Now you've got the national media figures, just coming in from all over, from every corner and in between of the United States to Tuscaloosa, and they'll start looking around. They're going to try to find something, but again, based on the facts, that's all you can do is go on the facts. If you were in that situation, the legal process you got to watch out for. But you always have to think about this too. A district attorney is an elected public office. People have to think about their future. They better get this right. They do. You say, well, they're going to do what's right and just. Well, they also have, it's a career. You don't stay as district attorney forever, but this whole thing, it's got to play out, but you got to be very careful to be condemnatory and accuse people of things. But as the facts come out, you're going to have to let that happen. I mean, I've talked to a couple of defense attorneys last night and said, again, there's two sides to every story. Yes. But, knowing that it was across the street on the strip there in Tuscaloosa where this murder occurred, I mean, again, you have to question. Look locally at Ja Morant, star for the Grizzlies, has a $250 million contract. A couple of weeks ago, story breaks out. After a game, he supposedly was in an SUV with someone who pointed a red laser tag, which is what you have on the end of a Glock or a 9 or whatever, at some Indiana Pacers players in an adjacent vehicle. First off, what are you doing hanging around with these low-life scumbags like that? You you have to say to yourself and to them, I can't be around you. I can't take that chance, because I'm willing to bet in his contract there's a morality clause or behavior clause or something which could reduce, partially or significantly what he gets paid, or there should be. Because if I'm investing that kind of money in somebody, I don't want them hanging out with a bunch of lowlifes. And if they grew up with them, that's their problem. They're not welcome around the Grizzlies team or at Alabama. You same thing, or any school. You pick the school, Rhodes, Memphis, Auburn, it doesn't matter. Think about this. I mean, if somebody calls you at 1:33 in the morning, I'm around, always hunting and fishing. I've got plenty of guns. Gun safety and being responsible, that's where it starts. But if somebody called me at 1:33 in the morning, I'd be like, goodbye. You gotta think about, the consequence. You gotta think things through. Again, I'm not there, but I'm not saying this about just Brandon Miller. I'm talking about anybody, Matt. As an AD of any size school, you got to have a serious conversation with that person and say, look, you may have dodged a bullet this time. I don't know. I wasn't there, but man, you can't be involved with stuff like that.
Rob, you know this. We are judged by the company we keep, right?
Yeah.
And I think in John Morant's case, he's got his father's a strong presence. He's at practically every game courtside.
Yeah.
I think this will be hopefully a lesson moving forward for Ja. He's such a wonderful presence in our community, Rob.
Oh yeah, he is.
And, I go back to Brandon Miller, who may be the number one pick in the draft, may not. We don't know how this is going to play out.
Yeah.
But, what's really unfortunate, the unfortunate thing is a murder occurred.
Yeah.
And then you take it a step further. An 18-year-old freshman was potentially asked to do something very harmful. He probably had no idea when he got the call, Rob. I mean, I don't know what is out there, but I mean, you put your teammates, someone that you're supposed to trust, go to battle with 35 times a year, every day on the court. You put him in that situation, and he's an 18-year-old. From my standpoint as a coach, when we recruited a roster, our basketball team was always family.
Yeah.
So even though they weren't related, they're family members because of what they go through.
Yes.
On a day-to-day basis. So, he was put in a really terrible situation, and I hope the young man can move forward from this and have a productive life in our society. I hope the statement by the attorney is accurate and Brandon was not there. That's what I hope, because he had 41 points last night and just a terrific athlete. But this has really stained a great season at Alabama in men's basketball.
Yeah, and it's for anybody. Just like you said, Brandon Miller, John Morant. You cannot hang around these leeches who are living for the most part vicariously through your hard work. And that's bottom line. And I like, what Gary Harris, our friend in Tuscaloosa, who was on in the previous segment, he is the sports anchor for Channel 23 down there. That's a sports radio show. If it's going on there, Gary will know. And we do know that Darius Miles and another another individual are both still in jail. I don't think they were bailed out. There was no bond. So they're still there. So, let's see what the process works out. But it's not a good look, I can tell you that.
No, it's incredibly bad. The university president has to be very, very upset right now. And not listen, it was a tragedy, and there's going to be some facts that come out that we don't know about right now that could point other fingers, correct?
Yeah.
But for the head basketball coach to make the statements that were insensitive that he did yesterday, after this has been dealt with, my gosh, I just can't imagine any of our coaches in a media access situation making those remarks. I was just really disappointed in Coach Oates. And I know he tried to retract and, but he let it out of the box. And I just, in my mind, I keep thinking wrong place, wrong time. And that's, come on, man.
Yeah. I mean, it's a very tough situation, but, I question again, I have to say this, is any other student, regular student who's involved in something like this, how would the student conduct code be applied to them?
Well, in an accessory case, Rob, I mean, I don't think they have enough facts right now.
Yeah.
If Brandon Miller didn't play basketball and Brandon Miller was not arrested, why should Brandon Miller be out of school right now? In Alabama, so more facts come through, right?
Yeah.
So it's got to play out. So to me, it doesn't matter that he was a basketball player in this situation because the student code of conduct is going to punish him if he did commit a crime.
Yeah.
Now he has not committed a crime.
Yeah.
So therefore, the university is also protecting the rights of Brandon Miller because, the investigation so far has not said he was an accessory to the crime.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, we can't jump to conclusions. This still is the greatest country in the world. And,
exactly.
and part of it is, you have some, justice is going to be served here. But Brandon Miller right now is not the target.
Yeah. And that's what I was going to say is, and I told this to Gary, there are a lot of people out there that whether they want to admit it or not, they don't like Alabama or they don't like Auburn or Georgia or Tennessee or Ole Miss, whatever. You got to take your blinders off and look at this as objectively as you can, like if you were on jury duty. So that's why I was asking you, having been an AD and associate AD, the code of conduct, it's clearly going to state whatever the rules are.
But Rob, I will tell you this. I would have from day one as an AD in this situation, saying we're going to buckle up and we're not going to make any comments in regards to this case after our initial statement.
Exactly.
We're going to make an initial statement. We're going to come out. We're going to support the families of the victims. Yeah. And then we are going to basically coach our team and play basketball the rest of the season. And
exactly.
So comes out. We're not commenting on this case anymore.
Yeah.
No comment. It's easy. It's easy.
And that's exactly what I was going to say. There wouldn't even be this discussion all over America right now if Alabama had told Nate Oates, you will not comment on this. Any questions, we'll have our legal people, our compliance people, we will have whoever there, media relations, PR firm, whatever, there, say that's a legal matter. I'm not permitted to answer questions on that. You'll have to talk to this person.
And
that's what made this worse.
Nate Oates totally dropped the ball. They had to have said that.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, there's no way they didn't
tell
Nate Oates
that. Yeah,
right?
You hope they did. Yeah.
So, yeah.
Right. But that's just, I think that's what's made this worse. And so regardless of your feelings about Alabama or whatever, you have to try to be objective on this thing. And there's a rush to judgment, but you're right. And we don't always see this in America. Let's be honest. There's an absolute double standard of hypocrisy in the justice system a lot of times for high profile people. And I think that's what people are thinking is going on here. If that's true, it'll all come out. But as of now, the facts and Brandon Miller is not a suspect. He hadn't been charged with anything. Right. And legal people know this. If you don't follow the law and check the boxes along the way, you can ruin somebody's life. So let's just see what happens on this thing. But I like your take on it. When we get back, I want to talk about this SEC race and the Rodney Dangerfield of college basketball, Texas A&M.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-City exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
Matt Dean, before we go back to it, I want to say too, the free market will work all this stuff out too.
Yeah.
I don't know if Brandon Miller has NIL deals or whatever. Start following the money trail. If there's anything to this thing, and there's an NIL deal, is it still in place? And if the NIL deal is still in place and going on, then the sponsor must feel good about it. But you and I both know, and everybody listening, that if there's something to it, these sponsors, NIL deals, if there are any, would very likely pull out. So just watch that. No one's really brought that up. But again, he's going to make a lot of money going to the NBA anyway. And again, I don't know his NIL deals, but the terms of endearment in life and business follow the money trail. And that's how it goes. But Matt, I like your take on this stuff. So let's get into college basketball.
Yeah.
What is the national narrative? Because we know there is one. Is it Buzz Williams? I mean, what the three-piece suit? He's not tall enough. What is it? They are A&M is 13-2. Alabama's 14-1. They've got a game against one another.
They do.
Before the season's over. They could be co-champions. A&M is never mentioned as a high seed, yet they're 13-2 in probably the second best basketball league in America behind the Big 12. Can you explain to the people listening why this Aggie angst is out there? There's more coverage about how bad Duke is and North Carolina is this year, as Tommy Kane said yesterday on our ACC report, than there is about A&M. I know they had some bad losses early, but that was a long time ago before they even started conference play. Is it okay to get better as the season goes along? Matt Dean, you're on the clock.
Well, I've always been a huge Buzz fan, and in the industry, Buzz is highly respected.
I bet he is.
And quite frankly, I had a chance to watch the Tennessee game the other night, and I was really impressed with their length, their ability, to defend the ball, off the ball. They made free throws down the stretch. Tennessee, I thought, fought hard without two starters, and Vescovi was not at 100%. He was a game-time decision. But I think the Aggies forced 16, 17 turnovers, and just really, even when Tennessee down 62-61, I believe, pressed them after a made free throw and turned them over, they stole the ball right back, made free throws, game over. I was just impressed. Dennis, the transfer from Wichita State, I believe, was like out there 6'5" and long and guarding Ziegler, the 5'9" guard for the Volunteers. It was just really chaotic for Tennessee in the half court to start up their offense. And getting back to Buzz, Buzz, when he gets in the tournament, you don't want to play his teams because they're well prepared. They play defense for 40 minutes. They're going to win the turnover battle. And this team he has right here, they go up on the glass and get the ball. I'm just telling you, Rob, from what I saw the other night, they can beat anyone in the country, not just Tennessee, not just SEC opponents. And I agree with your analogy. I still think we've talked about this. I like the Big 12 as a whole better. But let me also just throw a little bit of a plug in for UCLA and Arizona.
Yeah,
I do think when we get to tournament time, it wouldn't shock me if either of those teams made a run at the Final Four, if not got to the Final Four. But right now, that Bama and A&M game, it's going to be entertaining to watch. It may not be the prettiest thing, But Buzz will have a plan how to guard Brandon Miller. He will have a plan. On his staff, Steve Rockefort, Steve and I share the commonality. We have an old friend in the industry, so I've met Steve a couple times. When he was at Memphis with Cal, his son and my son went to preschool together, so we went to their birthday party. Rock's a really, really good assistant coach. So Buzz has got a staff that's all bought in. They're all in. The whole team is all in. I saw a thing on ESPN. They're doing loose ball drills on game day shoot around. I'm like, no one does that, Rob.
Yeah.
I wouldn't do that for regular practice. He's doing on game day shoot around. Buzz's guys are tougher than anyone in the country, bottom line.
You just nailed it. There was a guy I used to watch in middle school basketball when my boys were playing. He used to do the loose ball drill before the game. He'd have everybody lined up at the baseline, at the end of the court, and he would roll the ball like bowling, roll it out and you'd have to run it down and catch it, and you'd roll. But they may not be the most talented team, the biggest, the tallest, bunch of 4 and 5 stars. But in the words of Pat Dye, I love that speech. Ain't no reason we can't be the toughest, hardest working, get after your ass team in America. And that's what we're going to do. And we're going to keep recruiting the best players we can get, but you're going to fit into what we do or you ain't going to last long. That's Buzz Williams, and he's won everywhere he's been.
Everywhere.
And at A&M, look, I don't know what the problem is, but they're ranked 25th. They're 13-2. They're trying to keep Tennessee alive with artificial, means. They're not. Tennessee and Auburn are clones of one another.
Yeah.
They both struggle to shoot. They play defense. They're not great rebounding teams. And look at it now. We got Kentucky sitting there in third place, 10-5, and Tennessee and Auburn in fourth place, tied at 9-6. Well, Auburn's got a murderer's row at Kentucky Saturday in Rupp Arena, which they haven't won there since John Kaler hit the shot at the buzzer. Auburn won that game, I think, 51-50 in 1988. I don't know. I don't see them winning there Saturday. It's going to be a tough one. Kentucky is starting to play better.
They are.
This collection of talent, Calipari, reminds you of Kentucky traditionally. When they get to the SEC tournament, they're just on fire. I don't know if they're going to make that kind of run, but they're sitting there at 19-9. Tennessee's at 20-8. Auburn's at 19-9. A&M's at 21-7, and Alabama's at 24-4.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's about those losses. A&M is being criticized for the losses they had early in the season, non-conference play, and they're not being credited with the victories they've had since the SEC schedule began. That is cruel and unusual reporting.
Well, you said it in the last comment before this, Rob. They historically Buzz's teams start out a little slow. And some of that is, they're getting used to playing the way he wants them to play. And they get to conference season, man. They are the most prepared, prepped, tough team in the league, and you don't want to play them late. You don't.
Yeah,
and right now, it wouldn't shock me. I don't know who they play besides Bama, but look at what you mentioned. How fun is the SEC tournament going to be? Alabama, A&M, Kentucky, Auburn, Tennessee, those 5 teams. Those 5 teams are all capable of making a run to definitely get to the second weekend, and some of them are going to make a run to get to the Final Four. The SEC may have been undervalued because what I'm seeing lately is just a development of a team like Texas A&M and the rebound factor of Kentucky now playing the right basketball at the right time. I wouldn't want to play Kentucky right now in the NCAA, would you? Especially if you're what if Kentucky's a 7 seed and you're a 2 seed, Rob, in week 2? Would you want to play them?
No.
I wouldn't. No. I sure wouldn't. And that's what's the beauty of college basketball. We don't have these teams, Rob, that are going to go 38-2 anymore. We don't. NIL, the transfer portal, Coming off of COVID, you got 23, 24-year-olds playing college basketball.
Yeah.
We talked about St. Mary's College last time I was on the show.
Yeah.
There are some really good teams. I think Shaka Smart has done a tremendous job at Marquette. There are teams out there. Sean Miller with Xavier, right? They have a nice squad. There's so many teams that can win this thing. And that's why I think the SEC right now is being a little undervalued. And like you said, there's some non-con losses that they're paying for. You know, that's the bottom line.
That's right. Well, look, A&M's schedule, just looking it up on the SECsports.com website. A&M is at Mississippi State at the Hump in Starkville Saturday.
That's a tough one.
Yeah. And then next Tuesday, the 28th, they will be at Ole Miss. And Ole Miss, that may be it, for Kermit Davis. It's just not looking good.
Which I hate because I love Kermit.
I do too.
People in the world.
I do too. One of my favorite coaches, because Gordon again hooked me up and taught me about him back in 1988. So but again, look, you saw Ole Miss take Auburn to the wire last night. So at Mississippi State Saturday, at Ole Miss next Tuesday, and then at home against Alabama March 4th. And here's Buzz Williams saying the Aggies buy into the intangibles. They buy into that blue-collar hard work part of it. Look, let's bring in one of the world's most interesting men from Gainesville, Florida, GatorbaitMedia.com. Also, regular great writer and on the Buddy Martin Show, which is Monday through Thursday, 9 p.m. Eastern on Facebook and Twitter. Great show with some great guests. But Matt, one thing about Franz Beard is he's covered a lot of basketball over the years, and maybe you can make some sense out of it because you covered basketball in the Carolinas, in the heart of ACC country. You've covered the Gators back-to-back national championships in basketball. Maybe you can answer why A&M at 13-2 is treated like a team that's 2-13 by the media, not just in the South but around the country. And their question, they're on the bubble and all that. I mean, come on. A&M, what you explain, Franz, you can make sense out of this. I'm gonna let you do it.
It has to do with their schedule before they got to the conference, and they played a weak schedule, and didn't have a particularly outstanding record against a weak schedule, and that's where the problem is. It's just not going to, the only way they're going to resolve this issue is to keep winning, because you have an issue once you get to the conference side of things. You don't build up your net rankings all that much once you get into the conference side of things. You don't. It's like we used to go with RPI. Once you got to the conference part of the schedule, your RPI did not improve. Where you were when you got there, that's where you were going to stay. And the only time you made a move in your RPI was when you got through the regular season and then you did something in the conference tournament.
Yeah.
Now, the Aggies, I'll tell you what, right now, that's the last team I would want to play in the SEC, and that includes Alabama, which we'll get to that in a minute, because I kind of wrote a scathing commentary about Alabama and Brandon Miller, why Nate Oates is coaching, why Greg Byrne is the athletic director, why Brandon Miller is still playing. Those are among the great mysteries of life, because this is like, okay, Nate Oates saying, hey, he was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. Well, big deal. 8 shots were fired with his gun. Not a big deal. Alabama has enough talent to win it. They really do. But I'm going to tell you something right now. They suck right now when it comes to what they did with this thing with Brandon Miller. I think the Aggies can beat them, even though the Aggies don't have the inside play that Alabama can generate. But what they can do is this: Nobody shoots the ball well from the perimeter on the Aggies. Absolutely nobody does. I would say right now, Arkansas is the second team I don't want to play. And the third team I don't want to play is Kentucky. And I put Alabama at the number 4 team that people don't want to play, because this thing with Brandon Miller is going to play out, and it's not going to end well for Alabama. I don't believe. I think they have dug themselves into a very bad hole with this thing. They should have suspended the kid. If they had suspended the kid immediately and said, hey, give us a couple weeks to sort this thing out, then they could have done it. But the way it comes across now, they've known about this since January 15th, and now it comes across that they've been covering it up, that they'll do anything to win. And, a pox on Greg Byrne and a pox on Nate Oates, maybe the nicest guy in the world away from things, but what he did is dumb, just flat out dumb. Other than that, I have no opinion.
There you go. There you go. Matt, look, I tell you what, you are a great basketball mind. So is Herr Franz Beard from Dusseldorf. But nobody wants to play Texas A&M right now. And again, I like that comparison. It's kind of a diametrically opposing argument. All right. You lose these non-conference games early to some not so great teams. Then you do really well against some really good to great teams in your own conference. But you're being penalized for what you did before you got in the league. And then the old RPI days, your RPI didn't change once you got into the league. Francis really brought up some great points, as he is the oracle of Delphi and Gainesville. Can you respond to him? It's like the McLaughlin report. You're right. Go, Matt.
He's spot on. They lose in the Myrtle Beach.
Oh, yeah, he is.
They lose to Murray State. They lose to Colorado by 28. They lose to Wofford. Memphis beat them, though I think Memphis is a legitimate NCAA tournament team. That was a 4-point game at Memphis, right? Boise State beat them by 15. But then the thing that, as a former coach myself, I was never concerned with non-conference. But if you have that philosophy, going back to what Fran said, then you're all in on the conference play, and everything you do in conference is what you're judged by. And it may be that they're a 10th seed if they get in, or a 9th seed. I don't know, because their net can't be good because they got some quad 2 losses there, right? Yeah. Going back to the Brandon Miller thing, I think Fran's is spot on. Now, I've said this from day one. I mean, Greg Byrne, he either knows things that we don't know, but what Fran's laid out is the right thing to do. You probably, if you thought the kid was involved in any way, let's take a couple weeks to investigate, continue playing our season. And why Nate Oates keeps opening his mouth about this is pure stupidity. That's just my opinion.
No, he's brain dead.
Yeah. And this is just amazing.
Yeah, I stand by. Hang on these comments. Paul, we got to take a break. We'll be right back with more Sidelines. We're back with three nice guys: Rob Browne, Franz Beard, Matt Dean. And Matt, before Mildred pulled me away from the break, and I want to get back into everything that's going on in basketball.
Yeah.
Alabama, all that stuff going on. How do you think this thing's going to play out? And I think you're right. I mean, you got to look at it. if you know things, whatever would always gets people in trouble. It doesn't matter who or where you are. Not so much the indiscretion as if you ever cover something up and the media has to go out and find it on their own, they're going to crucify you. Every successful person that I've ever talked to, their advice has always been, look, when you're being interviewed by the national, media, financial magazines, sports, whatever, lay all your skeletons out on the table in front of you. Get them, be out in front of them. Because if they got to go dig around and find it, oh man, what's the old saying? Don't ever try to fight with people who buy ink by the barrel. That's just how it is.
Well, go ahead, Frank.
No, you go ahead, Matt.
You go ahead. I'm good.
You go ahead.
Here's Greg Browne knew stuff, and so did Nate Oates. They knew stuff, and the desire to win. And here it is: Alabama has a chance to go to a Final Four for the first time in school history. I mean, the very first time. They should have been. Now, I'll tell you what. They should have been gone in 1976 when they had when C.M. Newton was there and they had Leon Douglas at center. That was a fabulous basketball team. Wendell Hudson was on that team, and they were terrific. And I think they lost to Indiana, and Indiana went undefeated that year. Yes. But you look at they haven't had a good run since then. They had Mark Gottfried in there who never met a cheating deal he couldn't make. And, my gosh, the guy woke up in the morning trying to figure out if he could cheat on something. I'm sure he cheats on his wife too. No, I shouldn't say that. I'm kidding. Lord, forgive me. Okay. All right. Here's the deal. You can't cover stuff up. There an interesting poll came out in the 70s that said if Nixon had not tried to cover up Watergate, he would have been instantly forgiven. He was at that point in time the single most popular president in the history of America. Yeah. Period. They loved him. You look at what he won the 72 election by. And what happened is he covered it up, and people would not tolerate the cover up. Yeah. This is what is going to end up costing Alabama. Now, to say that the prosecutor there is saying, well, I don't know what we charge it with. How about complicity? Oh my gosh, he delivers a gun and he says, it's in the hat, the heat's in the hat, and he hands it to him. And then he says, there's one in the chamber. And Greg Browne says, and Brandon Miller's lawyers say, well, we don't know if he handled the gun. Are you out of your mind? Do you think we are morons? My gosh, Greg, I used to think Greg Browne was a smart guy. Now I'm convinced that he is one step removed from the pond scum that evolved into the lower life forms.
Look, you know what? To me, I'm trying to listen to every bit of information like you are, Matt, and you are friends, every bit of information on this. But I'll just say, if I were the coach of a basketball team and something like this happened, and the night of the event, this person and this person and that person and that person were all there, and they were members of my team, they would immediately, those that weren't arrested, the fact that they were even there, they would be suspended indefinitely. I would then find out, I would hope that the university Office of Student Conduct would have a meeting, the AD and the president, Office of Student Conduct, law, and say, okay, what are the rules here? Enforce the damn rules. You got to. I mean, and that's all I'm saying is, so because Gary Harris was on right before us, and I trust Gary, and he did make sense out of a tragic situation. He tried to. He's there in Tuscaloosa, but it's all going to come out, whatever there is. If there's nothing, the free market should ferret that out, guys. But man, allowing coaches to comment, that's what really has precipitated this avalanche of attack coming. And I'm Matt. You're right though. You would go talk to the university president. You would talk to, you being the athletic director. You would consult with the police and everything. Get all the facts, but I would immediately suspend anyone, and I would have them for even associating with people like that. I would punish them to where they would wish they'd never been born. I'll leave it at that.
Well, trust me, this was handled at the presidential level. I mean, anything of this magnitude, if this happens at Rhodes College, where I'm an employee the last 32 years, the president is talking to my direct report, and those discussions are being handled. And then the one thing, as a coach, I'm lower on the totem pole there, but I'm told to shut up and no comment. It's just the way you button things up. And if there is a cover up, everyone's going down from the top up.
That's right.
I mean, that's pretty simple. Yeah. But then for Nate's comments the other day, I was just like, I couldn't believe, wrong place, wrong time. I just could not believe Nate Oates said that. So it's going to be, and I think it's already had an effect on their team. Obviously, it's a tragedy, and they're not playing as well as they were playing, in my opinion. I don't look for them to win the SEC tournament. I really don't.
Yeah, and the wrong place at the wrong time, tragically, was for the victim. She was in the wrong place at the wrong time. That's what, by God, ought to be being said. Yeah. And I'm telling you, this situation, I'm not ready to say that for the people involved. Look, I heard what Gary Harris was saying, and I respect him. He's my friend. But I just believe anyone that associates, first off, I've grown up around guns, handguns, shotguns, rifle, hunting, fishing. If somebody called me up at 1:33 in the morning, I don't care if I was a 19-year-old freshman in college. Not in a million years, not in 10 million years, not in 100 million years would I get involved in something like that. You've got to learn to walk away and never put yourself in a position to fail. And I'm telling you, NBA teams are going to look at that.
Oh, yeah.
And then don't forget, Nate Oates went and consulted with Ray Lewis about talking to his team when this initially happened. I mean, he went to the Joe Stalin School of PR, Charm, and Wit.
Well, here, let me just give you a paragraph of what I wrote this morning, and I think that kind of may explain a little something about how I feel about it. I wrote this. University of Alabama Athletic Director Greg Burns says, although we're not investigators, we do have a duty to evaluate whether anyone involved in our program has violated the rules, policies, or standards of the university. Then I wrote, okay, so the University of Alabama's policy that prohibits the possession, transportation, and use of firearms and other dangerous weapons on campus at any time doesn't count. No big deal that Miller drove to where Miles and Davis were. Most would call that transporting, and hand over the murder weapon, which most would call a firearm, and told them the heat is in the hat and there's one in the head, which is to say there's a bullet in the chamber ready to be shot, and the bullet in the chamber and others were fired, killing the woman.
Yeah.
Now,
Franz, let me say something real quick along that line. I don't mean to interrupt you, but this is something somebody sent. It's an article that's out there on Fox Sports, and it says number 15 under the category of offenses disrupting order or disregarding health and safety in the student handbook should be read by Saban, Oates, and Byrne. It says, quote, being present during any violation of university policy or the code of student conduct in such a way as to condone, support, or encourage that violation. Students who anticipate or observe such a violation are expected, if possible, to report any potential violation before it occurs or report details of the violation after its occurrence. Hell, let's be honest, I've heard of students being expelled from some of these Ivy League schools for yelling out of their window, calling somebody a fat chick or a fat bottom girl. That's a hell of a song, by the way, by Queen. But, I mean, look, I'm just, what's going on here? Hold on, Slim Pickens wants to say something. What in the wide, wide world of sports is going on here, boys? God dog. Somebody explain this one to me.
Well, here's the thing is Alabama is so intent on getting to a Final Four. They finally have the horses that can do it, and they happen to be in a year when there is no such thing as a great team. There is none out there. Maybe the closest thing we have to a great team is Kansas, and Kansas is vulnerable.
Yes.
You know, Kansas is very, very vulnerable. Anybody in the Big 12 can beat anybody in the rest of the country, and they beat up on each other so bad that I question whether any of them will win the national championship. But the thing that bothers me is this: if winning if you are so obsessed with winning to cover up one of your players' involvement in a murder, and I don't care what they want to call it, that is involvement, okay? That's not just complicity, that is involvement, okay? It really and truly is. You know, what they're doing sounds like what the German officer said at Nuremberg. I was only taking orders, right? Okay, yeah. You know. You're watching 50 million people get gassed a day, and you're saying, "Oh well, gee, you know, we just thought we were having fun." Okay,
yeah.
Give me a break.
Friend, here's something else to report. This is you remember, Matt and friends, when the 4 Auburn players, Kitchens, Goodwin, Mike McNeil, and Dakota Mosley, were arrested. Well, they robbed a house. They went there, kicked the door in with a handgun. And before the sun rose that next morning, Auburn football coach Gene Chizik said they were expelled, terminated, no longer a part of the Auburn program. Basically, to borrow the line from that American general back during the Iraq-Afghanistan war, when talking about some sheik or some bad guy they wanted to get, he said at approximately 5:32 a.m. Central Greenwich Mean Time, Sheikh Abdullah Ahmed, whatever, blah, 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 was evaporated from the face of the earth by 2 Hellfire drone missiles fired from American forces high above. I mean, end of story. You get hit by a Hellfire, ain't nothing left of you. So I go back to this one here. In this story, wow. What more proof? You know, Chizik terminated those guys immediately. Now, one of them, Dakota Mosley, was just driving the getaway car, and all of them faced, when they went to trial, 15 to 20 years. The first one fought it, lost, and got 15 to 20 years. I think the rest of them took the plea deal of 3 to 5 years. But, I mean, just for being in the getaway car. Now, if it is true that you were there, and if it's true, in any case, your car was used to block somebody's escape, I mean, holy cow. Again, we need to get some smart legal people to explain this to me, but man, you know, somebody make sense out of this. Matt, friends, I mean, somebody, but it's got to be the message is they're not doing a good job of messaging to us. But let me just say this real quick. Folks, we most often see the face of Christ in the least among us. Go out and help with the expectation of getting nothing in return. And your honor is dearer than your life. That's what's most important. And go to the top of the sidelines.live website, hit that orange Patreon button. It is so easy. Jethro Bodine can do it. We need your help. This show, keep the lights on, keep it growing. We're growing. We've got over 40,000 unique listeners just on our sidelines.live website. That's growing. That's a lot just on one little mom and pop website. We're getting on radio stations. We're getting the word out because we have great guests like Matt Dean, Franz Beard, Jason Caldwell, Gary Harris. So closing comments, gentlemen, on what do you think is going to happen with this situation?
Well, I just want to agree with one thing Fran said, and I've said it in a different version. There's no great team in college basketball.
Yeah.
So there are 10 to 15 teams that can win this whole thing. And Franz, I agree. You know, the Big 12, they beat each other up. It's probably the best league in America right now, but it wouldn't shock me if they don't produce a Final Four team too. That's the type of year we're facing. I am a little biased to the West Coast because my son works in Oregon. So UCLA and Arizona are on my radar screen for potential teams to get to the Final Four. And getting back to the conversation of the day, you know, I don't know how this is going to play out at Alabama. It's just the most unfortunate thing I've seen in college athletics in a long time.
Yeah. Franz, 20 seconds.
Well, in the immortal words, Marvin Barnes tried to rob a convenience store in Providence, Rhode Island, wore his Providence Letterman's jacket, had Marvin stitched across it. The clerk at the convenience store said, "You don't have to do this, Marvin." And Marvin replied, "I ain't me. I'm somebody else." Brandon Miller needed to be somebody else.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's just, you know, again, at the end of the day, a 23-year-old lady is dead. She has a 5-year-old son who doesn't have a mom. And that is the victim here, not somebody else. Okay. Spare me. Okay. We'll be back tomorrow. Great show, everybody. Till then, have a great day. We'll see you tomorrow.